Welcome to Mentor Talks. I'm Tatya, CEO and co-founder of UpNotch. UpNotch is a free mentorship platform for executives, entrepreneurs, and professionals. We bring together industry leaders and like-minded individuals to share their knowledge through one-on-one mentorships and through these talks. If you are looking to find a mentor or become a mentor, please join UpNotch by downloading from the App Store or Google Play. For more info, go to www.upnotch.io.
Hi, so my name's Liz Parrish, and you're listening to Mentor to Mentor. And today I'm here with one of my mentors, Dr. Jason Williams. First of all, who am I? I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a patient advocate. I have a company called BioViva, whom Jason is also involved in. He's our chief medical officer, and we are working to cure biological aging and child disease through the use of gene therapies. So working systematically at the cellular level to reverse the aging process through gene therapies by targeting the hallmarks of aging, the things that are happening at the cellular level that make you get old and die of things like cancer and Alzheimer's and dementia. We may talk about that. I don't know where this conversation is going to go because here I've got my mentor right here on the video with us. Dr. Williams, can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background?
Sure. Yes, I'm Dr. Jason Williams. I'm a medical doctor, board certified radiologist, and my main focus actually is in cancer research, cancer immunotherapy. Of course, my side interest is in gene therapy and anti-aging, which I really got into more from a personal aspect of, and really the concept of that all of us are aging, all of us are dying, and it seemed like that was always ignored. And so one of the reasons to get in that area, but of course, to make my living, I deal in cancer.
Right. So, and there's a direct correlation with the aging cell and cancer. And we met because in 2013, after doing years of work with patient advocacy of the use of stem cells, my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I had grown very interested in what was happening at the cellular level behind a stem cell, why a stem cell was so potent and able to regenerate bodies, and how that might be correlated with how we get sick. So the genetics really fascinated me. I started looking at that. And when my son was diagnosed, after studying all of this fantastic research that was going on in universities, at biotechs, I found out that this technology was not translating to humans. As a matter of fact, some of the great research that we look at now to translate to humans has been around for over a decade, well over a decade. So I found Dr. Williams because I had heard about this amazing doctor who was very humanitarian and was doing work in gene therapy, and that's you. And you became my mentor and helped me develop and design how we would start a company that could start helping people now. But I, I I don't know how you got started in the regenerative space. Really,
Yeah.
tell us.
Well, so originally my focus was in cancer, and one of the things that I was involved in was gene therapy for cancer. So that kind of put me a little bit in that realm, and sort of the same issues that you were describing, where we had these things that were developed in the lab or other research that worked very well in animals, yet we never seemed to use it in humans. And I just really couldn't understand why we were doing all this work that seemed like for nothing. Um, I had a few projects that I did as a student. It was a nice way to work on things, and I was able to make some money to help pay my way through school. And I would do these projects, turn them in. One was a gene therapy project on ALS, and I remember I turned it in. I was like, okay, this is all what I discovered. Now what? And they're like, that's it, nothing else. You're done. And I was like, well, who's gonna take this to the next level? And they're like, oh, well, we don't know, but we've done what the funding was, for, and that was it. And so I realized that most of the research was just kind of a game. You try to get funding, you try to make something that keeps everybody happy, keeps everybody in having jobs, but really it wasn't actually advancing. And one of the things I didn't really understand was all the regulations and why things were the way they were. And so I would talk with patients and say, "Hey, look, there's this research. We could do this. You've got a condition. You're dying. Let's try it." And we did. And to me, that seemed like the right thing to do. And so that sort of got me at least in that direction. Obviously, my main focus was cancer, and I would, take on people would contact me and say, "Hey, I've got a child that has this condition or that. Can you do something about it?" And I always felt compelled to try to figure out something to help them. And the anti-aging part really, even though I was very interested in it and wanted to come up with something, it wasn't where I was working in, but sort of accidentally stumbled into it and was doing work with other genes for different purposes. And the animals, saw that they were younger and lived longer, and that kind of led me in that direction, which was exciting because I could have never dreamed of being able to try to do something like that, but it just happened that way. It was meant to be. And so I still had to keep my focus in cancer because I have put so many years into it. And right now we're really in a critical point. We're really making great strides. And so my goal is that I will get cancer in a position that I can move fully into anti-aging in the next year or two. So that's yeah, that was really the concept behind it. And the thing is that aging affects everybody. I mean, I know cancer affects a lot of people, but really aging affects a lot more. Yet it was nobody really considered it a disease.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, I mean, obviously we've been together for years. We're like family now, but when we started in the same places. We weren't those people that you see out there. They're like, well, when I was 5, I knew didn't want to get older. We literally were working on disease. I was looking for cures for childhood disease when I met Dr. Williams. I had been to an incredible conference that was about aging. And I met who's now a scientific advisor of our company, George Church, who was working on aging, but a myriad of other genetic outlooks for human race. And I was like, okay, how is this aging related to cures for kids? And just like you just said, it's directly related. A bunch of the genes that we look at for aging, as a matter of fact, every gene that our company looks at would cure a childhood disease, right? So, I mean, the whole idea is that their aging comes with 100% mortality right now. So that means everybody dies. And over 100,000 people die every day. And if testing these genes and helping people get access to therapies that that for diseases that there are no cures for, we can create cures faster for kids, then we kind of hit two birds with one stone, because 8-year-olds want to live, and 80-year-olds are only 8 times 10. They're only 10 decades or 8 decades old. So everybody feels young, but everybody needs access to health. And so that was the thing that we definitely had in common. So we were looking for, how do you treat disease? How do you make healthy kids? How do you make healthy adults? How do you cure, in your case, ALS? How do you cure type 1 diabetes and cancer in kids, on my side and your side, because you were doing that too. But by treating biological aging, we actually get to the root cause of the biggest unmet need on the planet, which is the diseases of aging, which is the heart disease, the dementias, the cancer, everything else. I know you can lower cancer with treating aging. It's still stochastic, so you still have some outlying problems. But I mean, we just really hit it off there, because it just made sense to go after the biggest unmet need and then try to shoot down everything around that we could, once we know what the outliers to that really is.
Yeah, I think one of the things with this is that as being a doctor, initially you're helping patient per patient, and yeah, you may help a few people in a day, and you may do some great things, but then as you start seeing the big picture, to be able to help masses of people, that's I mean that really is very impactful and impactful on society in general, and certainly if we can fix the aging problem, well, we can take care of a lot of diseases. And of course, even the same platform that we use to treat aging is valid in other diseases. So, having the techniques to be able to insert genes, we're going to be able to, fix other conditions as well. And of course, I think about like the advancement of society. A lot of times people are, I mean, your life kind of passes by you quick. You spend all these years training and learning, and then you spend some time working. Then maybe you retire or maybe you just die, and but that time frame is short. And there's a lot of work. Like for me, I mean, I've got work that I've been doing for 20 plus years, and and these could be projects that go on for 100 years. But who's going to carry them on if I die? Whereas if I can live to be 150 or 200 years old, then I can carry them on myself.
Yeah, and that's a really cool side effect of the anti-aging technology. So if we can make cells young through gene therapy, the organism isn't dying of these accumulative diseases that happen towards the end of life. A lot of people don't know that if you cured cancer, on average, people live about 4 years longer. That's it, because
Yeah,
heart disease and neuro degenerative diseases and everything like that, and people are slowly happening, your kidneys are failing, you're going blind, like all of this accumulation of damage is running in parallel. That's why most people over 65 have 2, 3 or more diagnoses. It's just your doctor's treating the lowest, the shortest fuse. And so I really love our synergy. So you're my mentor because you help me understand the whole medical side. And so I mean, I guess what would we tell people who were starting to come in? I mean, you can't do everything, right? You need to find professionals in your area of interest, and you don't, like, I didn't have to be a medical doctor, and I didn't have to be a molecular biologist, because I can find those people and put those people together.
hmm
I think we become an asset to each other working together. I can promote and I can talk to patient groups and I can advocate, but your part in it is invaluable. I mean, you're the person on the front lines of disease. And that's one thing that's relevant to today is COVID and regenerative medicine. I mean, look, it's mostly killing really old people.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, of course, the whole COVID situation is changing everything for us in healthcare. Everything is really shifting over to telemedicine. Um, Nobody wants to go to the hospital. Nobody wants to go to the doctor's office. So that's an area that's growing quickly. And from our part, even in cancer, we're looking a lot at that, of being able to take care of the patients remotely. Of course, a lot also, developing. Gosh, we've got now artificial intelligence systems that we're analyzing all these, genetic and RNA aspects of patients, and but in science, you've got a lot of people such as myself or other scientists who are developing good things, but they only know that aspect. They know what's in the lab, and they're really kind of waiting for somebody to kind of sort of find them and try to make something bigger out of it. Because not that they don't fully know or don't want to, but for me, I mean, I'm focused on the science and developing those things, but I really had no way of taking it to other people. And I really needed somebody such as yourself to come along and say, "Hey, look, this type of stuff is good. Let's make something of it." It's kind of like with a patient of mine years back. We were developing some new techniques in cancer where we freeze tumors and heat tumors up. And the patient asked me, he said, "Who invented laparoscopic surgery?" And I was like, "I have no idea." He said, "Well, that's because they didn't have a good marketer." And he said, "That's what you need." And but you do have to have kind of the team behind it, the team that are going to try to take this to the next level, to understand regulatory aspects, just to understand regular business aspects. And so So I think somebody that's interested, you find the right area that obviously has to be something that you're passionate about. In your case, you were passionate about disease and young children, which also, and then of course, as you kind of delved into it, you saw, the whole anti-aging part of it, and I was there working on the other part. So, and you were able to come along and take it to a place where otherwise it would just still be sitting where it was before.
I think
And
that's a really important thing. You got to reach out to people, right? Like
yeah,
you have to find your mentors and the people who will help you, and if they can develop business with them,
yeah,
you know share the responsibility. Don't go out there and drown because you don't want to raise your hands that you need help, otherwise you won't get done. And you and I work tirelessly. We work 7 days a week. I mean, we are constantly working on our passion. And I
mhm,
think that, I mean, I think that's when you kind of know, it's when you can, pick up the phone, you can text, you can, you have a question, and somebody will answer you because it's really their passion too.
right, yeah, yeah, which makes it fun. I mean, you don't really feel like you're working. I mean, for me, I don't generally. I just think that all the time I'm just doing what I like doing, and I think that's
Yeah.
for people. That's what you have to find. And when people ask me to say, "Hey, what should I do?" and you have to see like what their real passion is. And sometimes they'll think they're passionate about something, but they really have to kind of analyze it and figure out, is this something that's going to make them, stay up at night because they want to work on it and work weekends because they want to do it, or is it just going to be a job and they're just trying to get through? And do they have this idea of how they're going to change the world?
Yeah, I think that's, man, you really hit the nail on the head, because that really is a case. I work on this every day, but I don't feel like I'm working, but I know that people call it work, so I identify it as work. But and people say, well, don't you need to? Well, I do other things, but when I'm doing those other things, I'm thinking about it. I mean, we're designing your future. We're looking at the genes that will make you, me, and anyone listening to this more resilient to disease. Maybe even help them achieve things that they thought they couldn't because they weren't genetically predisposed to run a marathon, or go into outer space, or whatever. This is the core basis of space science, general health, and actually making people physically more capable of doing a lot of things. One of the things that we can do is increase your muscle mass, and both you and I have taken that gene therapy. I mean, we have so many synergies, and one of the things is we participate. We participate in what we believe in. We don't, if you have a product and like you aren't interested in trying it, I would reassess what you're doing, right?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, it has to be something that you believe completely in, that you would do yourself. And so, and that's certainly the situation we have. But what would you think for you have been some of the biggest challenges in this field?
I think that because we're so innovative, that the biggest challenges is watching, and anyone listening to this probably knows if they're cutting new ground, watching people, watching the inflexibility of the community, watching the inflexibility of how universities think science needs to be done. Like, for instance, all of the patenting that they do, and then the tech doesn't transfer. And then when you try to make a transfer of that technology, the skepticism, the worry, the concern, even though there's what do you call it, reproducible data
Mhm.
about the science in multiple labs, it's actually moving forward. People are risk adverse. I think that's the hardest thing, is the risk aversion, and yet they 100% die of the same diseases if they continue to be risk adverse. I never cease to be amazed. I've traveled all around the world. I've talked to multiple governments. I've met some presidents. They all love what we do. They want it to be a success, but they're concerned about what is the risk of using technology in humans. When my son was diagnosed, that kids in the hospital were dying because they consider letting them die be the safer thing to do than to try something experimental. That really is, it shocks me every single day. It shocks me that how we do bioethics, that we say, well, we shouldn't try something that could harm a person, so we let them die. I mean, to me, that's the worst harm. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is a big issue, and of course, and one of the things I think that timing is everything, and I think more and more we're getting to the point that this type of work is becoming acceptable. I think 5 or 6 years ago, people would say that you and I were crazy, and in 5 years from now, they're going to say that we were genius.
Yeah, and
So
they're gonna say we were conservative. Oh, you were so conservative. You have a medical setup. You did things by these regulations. You followed this. Yes, that's the thing. Even since we started, we're considered a more conservative option in the future of therapeutics, but we're still on the bleeding edge, and so much so that I'm surprised the some of the feedback that we sometimes get of just basically people being risk adverse.
yeah,
And I don't know, it's a lot of education. And then once I'm able to talk to people and educate them, and you are, they seem to be more excited about it, and people for themselves, each person for themselves wants access to this technology. They're just not sure if they want their neighbor to have access to this technology because it might be too risky. It's just, you know that's how drugs are developed. And so, things from open heart surgery, having the first open heart surgeries, weren't they done in Africa because no
uh-huh.
regulation, no regulatory system would have them. A whole bunch of the cancer therapies that are coming out are done outside of the big regulatory systems, and then
Agree.
they come back in with human data, that's the new model.
That is the way that things are going. That's how, from our end, overcoming some of these problems is, taking these advanced therapies that we have in the lab and doing them in jurisdictions that it's okay, and then basically reverse engineering that back into the
Back
U.S.
into
system.
regulations, yeah,
So,
back into regulations.
when
Well,
you have that human data, and you can now then you got to do it in the mice in
yeah.
the U.S. I mean, then we would have mice, but you have to duplicate it exactly, and then try to get it back into humans. Of course, is a long process.
And then it things that work in mice don't necessarily work in humans. So over and over again, you see clinical trials that fail because they were based on mouse studies. There was interesting news today about BioMarin in hemophilia A.
Right.
The FDA decided to hold the cure or the treatment for
Right.
hemophilia A for 2 more years
Right.
because they want to get data from the last patient of hundreds of patients worth of data, and that actually blocks the ability for people with hemophilia A to get the technology, and it's based on the claim that, and there are 5 regulated gene therapies in the world, and they're all considered one treatment to a lifetime cure, and they're questioning whether this is that. So literally, it's a semantics issue,
Mhm.
and I think that they should just throw out that claim, okay, and let the drug pass. People need this. It's expensive. The processes that they have to go through. I mean, we need to get these people to a level playing field with the rest of us.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, of course, why I think more and more, you're going to see with a lot of these biologic technologies, there's going to be independent centers. I mean, particularly, we see it right now with CAR T, where we engineer T cells. That's being brought back into our setting in the hospital and not through a big company. Is really where it should have been in the first place. But
Wow.
you're going to start seeing all these, small not really biotechs, but done independently, and that's I think that's going to be the future, particularly cost wise, because you're saving so much money on the regulatory aspects instead of a gene therapy being $1 million or $1.5 million. depending on what you're doing, could be 30,000 or 100,000 or 150 or somewhere in that range. But you cut out all those regulatory costs.
Yeah, and they really do make drugs that people can't afford. The cheapest gene therapy available today is $425,000 for one eye.
Yeah,
And that's something that, offshore in medical tourism could be done for $60,000.
yeah,
I mean, it's literally just shocking. And they're basically saying, well, it's a cure, so therefore there should be a price tag on that. Well, if you have a cure that everybody needs, it could be dirt cheap and you'll make a lot of money, honey. So don't.
exactly, exactly. Well,
So
what?
yeah, we're like, I mean, how do you feel about the cost of being a doctor,
Yeah.
working both outside the US and in the US? How do you feel about the cost of the healthcare systems? I mean, how does that trickle down? Do you feel like what do you,
Oh,
I don't know.
well, the healthcare system really is so bloated with middlemen everywhere that the cost is tremendous. I know that a lot of people they want to point the fingers at the doctors, and sure, doctors do okay. But I'll be honest with you, I have plenty of colleagues, friends who make lots and lots of money who never went to the schooling that I did, and that's considered completely okay. I mean, most doctors, and a lot of the ones I know make 150 to 200,000 a year, and that, I mean, there's plenty of other jobs that they can do. I mean, I've run into people who sell medical devices make more money
Oh,
than the
absolutely.
doctors, and so, but there's so much put in between with the hospitals, and the charges are just not clear, and there's not set up good competition. I mean, there should be more competition in healthcare, and people don't realize that most of the U.S. really is not a free market healthcare system,
No.
and so and that really runs up the cost here in Mexico. So if we were doing something, oh well, maybe like if let's say you want to get like a heart, bypass surgery. Well, you could go to the hospital, and the hospital say, okay, well, this is your price. And then you could go to the other hospital and you could say, hey, they told me this is my price. And then I guarantee you'll get them down. They'll be fighting with each other as who's gonna get down to the lowest and get the patient. And and that's really how it should be done.
Yeah, we need more free market healthcare. I've heard that things like LASIK and surgery for your eyes and things like that came down in price because it became like a free market, and that really made it so it's affordable for more people.
Yeah.
And that's seems like it's a really important step to make.
Yeah, and gosh, the medications. I mean, so we have patients that obviously we're using cancer medications, but I've got one that we're using right now that for here in Mexico it costs $4,000 a month, which is expensive, but in the U.S. it's $17,000 a month. Same drug. So it's just cheaper for the patient to fly here to Mexico. They can legally get a 3 month supply and then go back to the U.S. because of a pill. Now it's against the law if a doctor does that. A doctor cannot get medicine from Mexico and then use that. They'll go to prison for that. But a patient can do it themselves.
Well, I think that that's a really good point to this. Like, if we were mentoring somebody about how to do business, business is global now. And for instance, open heart surgery in the US is going to be six-figure bill for anyone who does it. And some insurance companies will actually pay for you to go offshore. So if you go to India, it's about $9,000. And I heard the mortality rate is actually better.
Yeah, yeah, that tends to be true. So, yeah, it's amazing. But the healthcare system is broken, and I think now with COVID, I think you're going to see a big shakeup, and you're going to see a lot more of the telemedicine. Uh, that I think is going to change things. And before the regulations were really kind of keeping that under control, but now I think they're the cat's been let out of the bag, and you're going to see difference because you know it was very difficult to try to have that type of work where you got licenses in every state, you've got different states, different rules, and so how do you have a system across the board that can function? And as compared to another country, I mean, most countries it's one country, the rules are the same across the country. If you're a doctor, in Madrid, Spain, you can also practice in Barcelona. And if you're a doctor in the United States and you're in Miami, Florida, well, unless you have a license in the other state, you're not practicing in New York or California. So, that's I think the system where in the U.S. you're dealing with every state is like its own country, and that makes the telemedicine system sort of complicated. But they recognize with COVID that this is a problem because you need to be able to shift medical assets around doctors, nurses, and things like that. So that sort of kind of opened up the eyes. And of course, also with people not wanting to be around other people and clearly not wanting to go to a hospital where that you could get infected. So
Yeah, and not only that, it helped immensely with the idea that we can make drugs faster. And that's what I'm most interested in. So, we have our research at Rutgers for our delivery method for the gene therapy. And one of the things that we're looking at is regenerating thymuses. We we don't actually try, we have not tried to go and say, oh, we have a cure for COVID. So we're not able to get that kind of money because we're looking at treating biological aging, but that could vastly solve the problem if you had a regenerated thymus to handle disease better than you do when you don't have a thymus because you're old, because your thymus involutes as you age. But what I want to see from the whole COVID experience is the risk aversion going down. Okay, we don't want to die from COVID. We don't want to die from heart disease or dementia or kidney failure or anything either. So why don't we keep it more open to faster innovation? And I know that you were working on some inflammatory marker inhibitors as well, correct?
yeah, yeah. And the whole COVID area is a little bit a difficult arena, but we work in some in cancer. Some of them also, are valid in COVID, and we were looking at being able to block some of those particular cytokines and to reduce the parts of COVID that generally lead to fatalities. It doesn't fix all the other minor problems, but the real issue is people dying from it. And but everybody knows in the end the vaccine is probably the ultimate way, and that's where most of the money and focus goes. So
Yeah, and I think actually we have a video that we're going to do together next week.
next week, yeah. Well, I'll see you, Liz. As always, good talking to you.